There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Easter Bunny. All right, good evening and welcome to, I don't know how many Maggids we've had, but welcome to our Hanukkah version where the stories will be about, in some way, shape, or form, about Hanukkah. And including myself, we will have 4 storytellers. So we are going to have, the first one is Rabbi War Chapter. I hope I said that right. Anyway, and he will be telling the first story this evening. And let's welcome him to our stage.
I want to see if I can get away. I've received a great deal of feedback in my career, and you're too quiet isn't a big part of it. So I'll just gonna start to do this without the microphone. It'll keep my hands free. Is this device working? Are we all good? Can I get a thumbs up?
Just careful, don't trip high.
All right. So this isn't quite in the spirit of Maggid of a personal story, but I'd like to say, as I did to Alona when we discussed this, that I did write it personally, and it is an audience participation number. So I hope that you will come in on the rhyme of the rhyming couplets and make this an interactive affair. This is entitled, How Rabbi Josh Saved Hanukkah. Once there were 2 rabbis who couldn't quite agree about the way that holiday of Hanukkah should be. How many candles should be lit each and every night? Should we light them right to left or maybe left to right? Should we light them left to right or maybe right to left? People couldn't quite agree which way to light was best. Shammai said Hanukkah is just like a great feast. You start out with the most and you end up with the least. You start out with the least and you end up with the most. Just like filling up your glass before you make a toast. Hillel said, here's the way that it ought to be done. The number to start out with clearly should be 1. We put in 1 more candle for every following light. Put them in from right to left and write them left to right. Everyone knows it's far more fun to add than to subtract. So surely this must be the way a proper person acts. To take away a candle each night would be very sad. Adding new ones every day makes us really glad. Shammai stood up and shouted, now that is just absurd. It doesn't make a bit of sense, not a single word. The candles go in right to left every single night. And then they're lit quite carefully, going left to right. If arguments for doing so is somehow what you're needing, just think how our eyes move across the page when we are reading. When we read in Hebrew, as everybody knows, it's from the right to left that we ask our eyes to. Hillel declared, that's nonsense. I won't give up the fight. I'll argue and I'll argue if it takes 8 days and nights. You'll have to, muttered Shammai, for as anyone can see, when it comes to lighting candles, we rabbis can't agree. So they argue, and they argue, all through the winter's night. Neither rabbi would admit the other one was right. Hour after hour, they kept on going. Both rabbis were so confident the other guy was wrong. They talked and they squabbled, they shouted and they screeched, disputing and debating, they pouted and they screeched. They ran until they raved until they ranted, they huffed and puffed, they moaned and groaned and gasped and wheezed and panted. But just when it seemed as if the fight would never end, there came a wise suggestion from one of their good friends. With fear in his great heart and a lump in his small throat, this guy gets up and says, hey, why don't we just
Vote.
Why don't we what? Cried the two rabbis together. That may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. The idea is preposterous. It's crazy, mad, berserk. That could be, said their good friend, but maybe it could
Work.
You think this voting thing could really help? Said Hillel to Shammai. Who knows, said Hillel. What's to lose from giving it up?
Try.
All right, said Shammai to Hillel with a toothy grin. But I'll bet my way of lighting is the one that's going to win. We'll see, said Hillel, as the two old friends warmly shook hands. For losing this important vote was just not in his. The rabbis, they soon voted. Not a one among them dallied. The votes were quickly counted. The results were swiftly tallied. And when the counting and recounting finally was done, Hillel's way of lighting was indeed the one that won. Shammai was upset, disappointed, hurt, and sad. But Hillel said to him, my friend, please don't feel bad. We have rules about voting, both for losers and for whoever wins has got to take the loser out for dinner. Though your way of lighting candles has unfortunately failed, you might prove far more lucky with fried latkes and clay. There you go. Now, whatever happened, you might ask, to that shy and quiet friend who saved Hanukkah and its candles from that fight that wouldn't end? That person soon came to be known as the great sage, Rabbi Josh. We thank him for his courage each time we light the Happy Hanukkah, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, the rabbi has thrown down the gauntlet, and I'm going to see if I can be loud too. Because Alona's daughter used to call me a loud lady. So I wanted a couple things. The music stand that's totally giving like middle school, high school band practice. And so if you see me like breaking out in hives or having a panic attack, that's why. I mean, the clarinet I had didn't deserve that. And so I gotta, you know, when I third the rhyme or the rap, I thought, Rabbi is the next Jewish Snoop Dogg. I was like, who knew the Jews could rap? And they can. And so our next presenter or storyteller is Mark Lamar. I know nothing about the story that he's going to be telling. So come on up. You can be loud too. Or you can be on the microphone. I put it on. Oh shit, I can't see. I think, oh yeah, I put it on. If you don't like it, you can, yeah, move it.
Okay. I was told I need to use this. I speak way too quietly. So when Alona asked me to, if I'd be willing to do another story, so I asked, what was it about? What's the Maggid about? She said, well, it's about Hanukkah memories. And I thought, oh, so there's just one memory that I have. I mean, many of you know that most Hanukkah memories sort of blend together from one year to the next, especially when you're younger. But there's this one Hanukkah where we went to Brooklyn. My family went to Brooklyn. We lived outside of New York City, in one of the suburbs. And to go to Brooklyn was a big deal. Now, my grandparents' house in Brooklyn was my father's family. And my father's family, it was really a large family. There were like, I was trying to number, just in my father's immediate family, there were 9 kids. And then there were an additional 6 kids who were second cousins. And we all lived it was a time when you sort of lived in the New York area. You know, families sort of stayed together. It was before the great expansion across the country. But the trip was going to be special because it was going to go beyond simply my first cousins. It was also going to be my second cousins. And we were going to my great uncle's synagogue to have this. I remember the excitement pretty clearly. And I remember the trips to Brooklyn were special because for once we had to go through Manhattan to get to Brooklyn. This was before the Verrazano Bridge. This was before. The only way to get to Brooklyn was to go down the west side along the Hudson River and to go into the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, which at the time was the longest tunnel in the world. Going down first of all, to get started, the New England Thruway, which is Route 95 in New York, had just pretty much been built. And of course, they put the toll booth right at where we were supposed to get on. And my father refused to pay the 25 cents for tolls. Just absolutely refused. So we'd have to travel this wind-about route through another suburb to catch another highway into New York. And then, of course, New York was really, really lively. The wharf along the Hudson Rivers were active. There were no special parks at the time. There were working wharfs. And the thrill was to catch some of these great cruise liners as you drove down the West Side Highway. You could see the United States, the SS United States. I remember when the SS France was first in New York City, had these great funnels with these wings that spread out across the river. It was very exciting. And to go into the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was a matter of, it was a time when cops actually walked along the route, becoming asphyxiated as they run along, but they walked along the route. And you know, you got a chance to wave to them, and they would wave back to you. What I remember most about the trip was, I should sort of describe this family. So we had what was called a cousins club. I don't know if anyone else here had the same sort of experience. It was a way of keeping the family together, and we would do all sorts of things together. I remember we'd go out on for weekends for trips to the Catskill Mountains, where we would go. You know, as a kid, you'd get on a horse. And no matter how much you kicked the horse would, of course, just sort of plod along. No matter, you know, sort of very unexciting sort of moments. But what I remember most about those occasions was that I had an Uncle Dave who was very funny. I had two cousins who were also cousin Red, and then there was my cousin Ida, who could match her wit to the other two equally. And so, and it was like a comedic roast, you know, a family roast that we would sort of all participate in, and everyone was laughing. So what I remember most about this particular Hanukkah was it took place in this, as I said before, in this the basement of the synagogue, and the basement had these paneled walls, you know, like that old style paneling that was sort of, the wood grain is printed on the paneling, and it sort of smelled musty, you know, it was more than a little musty. It was pretty musty. If I can remember it, you can imagine it was pretty musty. And the floors were sort of cracked linoleum. And I just remember a long table, and the thrill was, in part, it was Hanukkah, so not only were we getting gifts from my parents, I was getting gifts from all these aunts and uncles and older cousins of mine. You know, what I remember, I mean, these things all sort of bring back memories. I remember my grandfather, who was a great storyteller, very funny, but of course it was always in Yiddish. And so whatever laughter there was laughter that I would respond to from the laughter of my parents. You know, it wasn't, I never understood, and then I have to wait for the explanation in English, the translation. It sort of took a little edge off of it. And I remember my Uncle Abe, who was best friends of my grandfather, who they came together to the United States in 1908. And my Uncle Abe was actually my grandmother's brother. And of course my grandmother, and what's odd is that I just saw a picture of a friend of mine's grandmother, and she looks exactly like my grandmother, because they were almost all identical. They all sort of wore the hair in the same way. They all wore sort of dresses, the same dresses. They all had these orthopedic shoes, you know, that were sort of laced on the sides for comfort. But it was sort of a clan gathering, you know, as sort of interesting as I can imagine other clans would have. And the thing, you know, I can remember the smell of my grandfather. It was a combination of cigar smoke and mothballs. He would wear these vests, you know, that would sort of have these odors clinging to him. And in part because I thought for a long time that my grandfather had cigars surgically attached to his fingers, because I never saw him without the same length cigar, no matter what time of day or what evening it was. It was always the same. I was always stuck between his fingers. I never really saw him smoking. I just saw him sort of burning. My grandfather was a formidable character. My Uncle Abe was a very sweet man, who, in terms of religiously, my grandfather was a, more rigid in his views about what was acceptable, what was halakhic. And my Uncle Abe was a little more, very, very observant, but a little more flexible, a little bit more liberal, if I could use that word. When my oldest cousin was being bar mitzvahed, my grandparents and the rest of the family came in for the bar mitzvah. Of course, this was the eldest son of the family, the whole clan. And so it was a big occasion, and it was pouring rain. It was going to be a Friday night service as well as the Saturday morning service. And my grandfather wasn't going to go to it because it was raining and he wouldn't drive. I mean, it was pouring down. And my Uncle Abe interceded. He said, you know, really, what's important to you? You know, if you break the law a little bit, it's not such a big deal. You'll get over it. God will forgive you. That was my Uncle Abe. And my grandmother was a lot more like my Uncle Abe. I had cousins, my father's first cousins. There was Milty and Lenny, as well as Ida. And Milty was a big thing because Milty was missing fingers. You know, when you're a kid, you know, you sort of, you know, these sort of aberrations really sort of, you know, completely, well, it was a combination of fear and curiosity. You know, you weren't quite sure where it all came from. So can you imagine that all of these characters were assembled in one room, and we had all these kids, and there was all this chaos, and there was all this shouting and shrieking the way kids do. And what I remember most was just how just how home I felt. You know, I mean, these were not attenuated relationships. These were people who were close with, you'd hear about all the time. This was before we had FaceTime, of course, and before we had all the things that we have now. And yet, there was this incredible closeness. And all the occasions that we had were often a mirror of that occasion. And that's what that's what I remember the most. That's my memory. My memory is of that warmth that was created in that dingy basement of my Uncle Abe's synagogue.
Okay, I'm going to still be a loud lady. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so good thing I gave up my career as a ninja. So, Mark, thank you so much. I enjoyed hearing your story. Mainly, I used to live in Brooklyn, so getting to hear about Brooklyn, and then I thought, I really love Brooklyn, especially at dinner time, and so I bought a plane ticket one way on my phone. But our next storyteller this evening is going to be Jeff Rice. And Jeff, I don't know what your story is going to be about, but come on down and let's talk about. We have a Christmas tree, we have a menorah. We have a menorah, we have a Christmas tree. We
two
can all,
Christmas trees.
the two Christmas trees. We can all live together. I have my gooey Christmas tree, as Lona calls it. So take it away, or give it back.
Okay. Excuse me. One Hanukkah, my parents hung stockings over the mantle in our home. Now I remember this because it's the only memory I have of my parents trying to copy Christmas. My very Jewish grandmother, on the other hand, she used to buy us chocolate bunnies during Easter, and my mother sometimes made ham for dinner. And so we were, accustomed to assimilation, and I even played a wise man in my preschool Episcopalian Christmas play. But this was the only Christmas moment I remember my parents supporting. And for me, that's weird. And it's weird because I don't know why they felt compelled to hang stockings. I have no memory of wanting Christmas, of being interested in Christmas trees or Christmas shows on TV. Unlike the traditional secular Jewish narratives of growing up in America during December, such as the one Grace Paley tells in the story The Loudest Voice, I was not envious of Christmas. We celebrated Hanukkah. This was Hanukkah in our house. We lit a menorah, we opened one present each night, we didn't spin a dreidel, we didn't eat latkes or sufganiyot, we just focused on the presents. And my parents hid presents in their bedroom, in their closet, in their drawers of their nightstand. Like most kids, I found them. And I peeked under the wrapping, I pulled the wrapping back just a little bit to see what was inside. I held and shook the wrap boxes, trying to guess what was inside. Presents are like little Pandora boxes, hidden gestures and expectations which will delight or disappoint once opened. And the Pandora box present promises temporary joy, I always wanted this, or temporary disappointment, oh, socks. And like any kid, I wanted that Pandora box open. And like any kid, I was not concerned with the consequences of a Pandora box opening. So inside my parents' nightstand drawer one Hanukkah when I was probably about 5 or 6, I found a package of Snow White stickers. Now these were stickers that came with a glossy background, meant to adhere to the stickers, which could be removed and replaced as one wished. That is, you could reuse the stickers to play out various scenarios on the vinyl backdrop of a castle or a forest. Now I remember seeing the stickers in the drawer. I closed the drawer, and that was the last I ever saw of them. Between the time I saw the stickers and the onset of Hanukkah, they vanished. My parents, once they noticed the missing stickers, accused me of taking them. Now, a question before I continue, why Snow White? Why did my parents think I wanted Snow White or Disney, stickers? I wasn't watching Snow White or Disney movies the way my kids would eventually do. I don't have any interest in Snow White. Snow White is the story of being envious. The witch envies her, the dwarves envy her, we, the audience, envy her. She's beautiful, she gets the prince, she overcomes a great obstacle, she lives happily ever after. Snow White is the ideal Christmas stocking stuffer. She opens the Pandora's box of envy. Holidays that involve presents inevitably involve envy. What the other person got, what one didn't get, what one wanted, what one still wants. Someone wanted Snow White stickers that Hanukkah. It wasn't me though. Did you take Snow White? My parents asked once they realized the stickers vanished. This would become a question that would be repeated throughout my childhood, well into my adulthood. Jeff, what happened to Snow White? Tell us what happened. Jeff took Snow White, everyone. Jeff, just tell us what you did with Snow White. Now, memory, as we know, is an unreliable narrator. Memory tells us stories that sometimes are not true. Memory hides but foregrounds behaviors, good and bad. Memory talks to us daily. What do I remember? I remember my parents' bedroom in Prime, Florida, where I saw these stickers. I remember the nightstand. I remember their walk-in bedroom closet in the next house in Kendall, where they hid presents behind laundry and clothes. I don't remember ever being taken with to look at houses when we moved from Prime to Kendall. I don't remember being asked how I felt about various issues that concerned the family. I don't remember being asked what I felt or cared about. I remember being envious of children who had those experiences. I don't remember the specificity of all the Hanukkahs that would follow, the lighting of candles, the unwrapping presents, the pleasure of holiday food. Why do we give? As an act of service, to please, to get something back? Why celebrate a day with gifts, whether a group of gifts all at once or one each day for 8 days? You know, potlatch is a native gift-giving tradition of outdoing the other person with gifts. It feels generous, let me give you even more, but it actually is an act of generating envy. Look at the significant status which allows me look at the significant status which allows me to out-gift you. Parents, knowingly or not, participate in a type of potlatch. Kids cannot give the same back, either because they lack resources or even understanding. Is envy built into any gift-giving holiday, whether it is the Americanized Hanukkah or Christmas, or holiday memories based on some form of envy? 7 dwarfs, 7 sins. Envy is one of those sins. I used to buy enough presents for my kids on Hanukkah so that they could open one each night. Then we started traveling abroad to places like Tokyo or Lisbon during the holidays, and the travels became the present. And the envy of all my relatives and then my partner at the time. Why don't you take me with? My present was the trip and the supposed memories that would stay with them, like travel ghosts. Then I started wondering, do they even want presents now? We don't seem to be a present-driven family. I don't remember ever buying them stickers of any sort, but I may have. Why would stickers anyway make a good present? You pull off the sticker of Snow White or a dwarf and you place it somewhere on the backdrop scene. You make up a narrative to accompany where you place them. Oh, Snow White goes here, Snow White goes there, Snow White breaks down, Snow White hopes. You know, holidays are narratives of celebration and giving. My parents cling to a narrative that I stole the stickers. I cling to a narrative they did not. You know, the original Grimm Snow White narrative involves a narrative of blood, witches, death, deception, lies, jealousy, theft. And the narrative involves presents. Snow White is given 3 poisoned presents by the disguised stepmother. The 3rd does the job. The Snow White stickers, it seems, were my poisoned present. Jeff, my parents would say, well into my adulthood, I mean like years ago. Who took Snow White? Tell us it was you. I'm 55 years old. Acts of service is one of several of the love languages, right? One type of act of service is giving presents. As a kid in suburban Miami, I no doubt wanted presents for Hanukkah like most Jewish children. Snow White was not Jewish, as you know. Emil Berliner, one of several inventors created with the invention of vinyl, was. The Snow White stickers I was forever blamed of stealing were vinyl. Nobody knows what happened to the stickers. I never saw them again. I never played with them. My only memory of them is this glance when I opened the drawer, and then the yearly taunting from my parents that I took the stickers. If I have any other memory narrative this part of my gift-giving childhood, it is hidden deep inside of me, like Snow White's sleep, awaiting a metaphoric awakening at some point by a metaphoric princely revelation. Now these stickers are my Hanukkah ghosts. The ghost of Christmas, is well known in such narratives as A Christmas Carol, but Christmas and mantle stockings and trees and Santa and lights, these are the ghosts of many American Jewish children. They haunt us at times with envy, as in, why can't we have that too? That envy is amorphous. It's only for a month or so, and then it's gone, just like those stickers. And I think of presents this way as well: ethereal, amorphous, temporary love languages we can be pleased with or surprised by, but they don't last. The Pandora's box of gifts during Hanukkah or some other holiday opens up into one or both of related emotions, satisfaction or envy. I can remember many gifts given to me over the years, but those who gave the gifts, they're now gone, ghosts in my memory, ghosts in my narratives about myself and my life, the imaginary envies of what they feel without me now. what do you want for Hanukkah this year since we aren't traveling? I asked my kids the other day. I don't know, one says. I'll make a list, the other says. I should buy them Snow White stickers as a joke. I should buy them the stickers as if I were buying my own Hanukkah ghosts. A lingering haunting of my childhood, a parental taunting, which I like to do too, a present I never actually received, but was accused of taking, Pandora's box, all that holidays offer. I could hang a stocking on the mantle, I guess. I could buy 8 presents for each kid. I should do something, whether it involves Snow White or not. We're after all Jewish, and we love our various Jewish ghosts. Whatever I give them, I hope I can taunt them too, well into their adulthood.
Thank you, Jeff. And I want to go on the record as saying my 8-year-old self wanted those Snow White stickers. And I actually asked my mom, not for the stickers, but a dress. But I would have taken the stickers. And she said, no. Walt Disney was a Nazi. And we're not supporting him. And I was like, so we're not going to go to Disney this summer? And my mom says, it's an amusement park, and I am not amused. So, there you go, Mom. So, I'm Susanna. Guess I'm the MC. I'm here. I'm going to tell a story about Hanukkah. So, I have a love-hate relationship with Hanukkah. So, I think it's pretty obvious. I love the presents. And no, I did not get Snow White stickers, but I got Lisa Frank stickers. So whether it was Lisa Frank stickers or whether it was Strawberry, the Shortcake Dolls, or Jordache jeans, or anything like that, I was really excited. And my parents had a gift for my sister and me for every 8 days. Now they kind of like gambling. They started off really good, and then pretty soon it's stickers. So, but that's one of the things I love about Hanukkah. The second, my mom would make latkes. That crispiness would rival that of the hash browns at I forgot the name of the restaurant. Anyway, Waffle House, thank you. I'm getting old, just go with me. So she would make them, and they would be crispy on the outside, soft in the middle, and just warm enough that the sour cream and applesauce would just kind of meld into one. And my sister, she's the older one. I like saying that now. And she and I would always have a running bet with my mom on how long would it take before the smoke detector went off. And we're Jews, we're short, we're not handy, we don't have a ladder, so we're like trying to balance precariously to get this smoke detector to stop going. And my mom would let me light the candles. And to like an 8-year-old, that's like a big responsibility. And I remember feeling how the warm wax would feel on my fingers, and I'd be playing with the candle and not really lighting them. And but I have not been accused of any arson. And so, I'm sitting there playing, doing the candles. And then we talk about what I hated about Hanukkah. I hated being Jewish. I hated not having a Christmas tree. I hated not being allowed to sing Christmas carols. I hated trying to explain over and over and over to my friends who the Maccabees were. No, they were not our next door neighbors. And why I wasn't more excited about Jesus Christ being born. And so I just got tired of all of this thing. I even got tired of the Hanukkah guilt. But what I really, really hated the most, and it was because I was the youngest, and just like Passover, you know, you always got to bring in the youngest. And so my mom would say, my nickname, Nana, she said, would you like to say the Baruchah? And I said, no. And she said, Nana, I'm asking you, would you like to say the Baruchah? And I said, I'm saying no. Well, guess what? Mom won. And I was not going to Sunday school. I was certainly not going to Hebrew school. The words of the Baruchah were clumsy in my mouth. The shape of the words did not fit into my mouth. And I fidgeted like this the whole time, and one time I tried to, write it out on my arm, but the words just would sputter out like an old car that was trying to start. And I was embarrassed. And my sister would sit there the whole time and roll her eyes and why can't we get through with this and blah, blah, blah. And I hated every last minute of it. Well, eventually I grew up-ish, and my sister and I went to college. My mom and dad divorced, and my mom would be by herself saying the Baruchah. And I don't think she made latkes at that point, but she had our wax-laden menorah that she would put in the window, and sometimes she would call me. Thank God we didn't have FaceTime at that point. But she would call me, and she's like, you want to say the Baruchah with me? And then I would just sit and be like, no, no, nobody's here. Nobody's here. Got to go to a Christmas tree lighting. But eventually, a couple years ago, my mom passed away, and we were cleaning out her house, and in this closet, there was the menorah. I hadn't thought about it in years. And over time, just the wax from years and years and years of Hanukkahs had grown brittle and hard. And I saw the menorah, and I went to pick it up, and the wax just went all over the floor. Just went everywhere. And I kept trying to pick it up, just grasping at it. And there was too much wax, and there were too many memories. And now I will think of the gifts that my mom and dad gave me, the stickers, the strawberry shortcake doll. All of that is at the bottom of the landfill somewhere. But after all these years of living, I realized that the most important gift I received from my mom starts with Baruch Atah Adonai. Okay, so we should have everybody that told a story come up here so somebody can take a picture.
Okay.
I